Hello, friend. Welcome to the Happy Family Club. We're delighted to have you join us. Our mission is to help you have a happier, stronger family. We do that by bringing you the world's greatest experts in family, marriage, parenting, and relationships. We interview them to discover their secrets, their strategies, their techniques, and bring them to you so that you can cherry pick exactly what you need right now to have more success and more joy in your family.
And if you enjoy this interview, we encourage you to share it with your friends and your family and come on to the happyfamilyclub.com and see if you can find more information that's going to help you and your family be happier.
Again, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the interview. Friends, we are so excited to have you here today. It is a great honor for us to have Aly Pain with us. And Aly is remarkable individual. What a treat for you to get to know her and spend some time with her during this our time together. So Aly grew up, and Aly, you can fill in some more of this, but one of the things I loved is Aly grew up with some a little bit of OCD, a little bit of emotional challenges. She was this super talented, intellectual, athletic individual. And deep down inside, there was like all this stuff churning and going on, eating disorders and other struggles that you had, and especially in your teenage and young adult years. And then you found a way to turn that around. And so now, guys, again, I'm not going to tell all of her story, but now, guys, she has used that to fuel it's just an incredible mini empire of helping parents around the world, speaking on stages, all over the place, providing master classes, resources, courses, all with an effort to help parents like you and me figure out how to live joyfully with teenagers and help them to become amazing adults. So
And
we're
get over the moodiness and the disrespect
or at least
and
figure out how to use that
how
to
to
power it. I don't know.
power that.
Yeah, now so we get it, Aly. Like we
Oh, yeah.
we've dealt with a few teenage children,
Yeah.
so we totally you have as well. So thank you so much for taking your time to be here today and to engage with us and our listeners. So I don't know if you want to add anything else,
Yeah,
babe.
very excited. We've been through only 9 of our children have been teenagers so far. We have 2 more to go. So
And
each one has been very different and unique. And
Yes, they are. Yes,
we
they
are
are.
still learning, and we would love to just continue learning with you on how we can be better and how all of our community can improve in that area.
yeah, exactly. So we'll start off with actually I want to jump right into your background first because you are one of the most passionate, like forceful, energetic people we've ever talked to about this topic. And we've talked to a lot of energetic, forceful, passionate people, and we just love what you bring. And I wanted to start off with tell us a little bit about your background and tell us why this like incredible passion for helping parents and teenagers. So lay it on us. Give us a little bit of your background and your reasons why.
All right. Well, first, thank you for having me. This is an absolute pleasure to have the be part of another platform that is empowering parents because this is one of the hardest jobs in the world for which there's no training.
Exactly. Right.
I just want to say for any parent watching this who's struggling or feeling lost or really resentful of their teenager and angry, it's all normal. It is all okay because you can't fail at something you were never trained for. So
Right.
let's just get that off the tip. Let's just let everyone just, let's um so my passion is that I based on what I just said there, I don't believe that parenting needs to feel so hard.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't believe that being a teenager needs to feel so hard
Mhm.
because there's no training for either one. It is.
Yeah.
And that, from my own experience, which I'll get into in a minute, just really breaks my heart
Yeah.
because so much of we can scientifically prove that when relationships work at home, the rest of life is so much I'm not going to be careful with easy, but um we navigate life in a more skillful way, which mitigates perhaps some of the pain and the pitfalls.
Mhm.
And so it's that critical. So for me growing up, I was raised by two incredibly loving parents who came from their own significant trauma
Yeah.
and were parents of the day, which is highly authoritarian,
Mhm.
control, power over. Please, please, this does not make them evil, terrible people. They were doing the best they could as well.
Exactly.
I unfortunately for them was completely the opposite and needed something very different, which they didn't know and were never taught because
Yeah.
they didn't have access to the information that we have now. Um, and so for so much time, we were just constantly butting heads, just constantly butting heads. Um, I learned in an authoritarian environment, very, very strict, that performing was the way that I was lovable.
Mhm.
Performing was
Mhm.
the way that I um, wasn't a failure.
Yeah.
Now, I'm cautious when I say this because, um, again, my parents were not raised in an environment where they were ever, told anything kind either. You were only spoken to when you needed correcting, right?
Right.
So that was how I was raised. So I learned that performing academically, athletically, with friends, socially, with the neighborhood, parents, all of the things, when I performed and did that correctly, I could stop the criticism from coming.
Right.
I wasn't necessarily earning compliments, but
Right.
I was safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that worked for a time. Now, thankfully, my father is extremely intelligent. He skipped 3 grades. I was supposed to skip a grade, but socially they decided, "No, not for me." So I stayed in with my peer age group, but, what they didn't realize at the time, which is similar to my dad, and I've actually had mine tested, is I have a photographic memory. And
Wow.
so I wasn't actually learning anything. I could just look at things one time and
And you just had it. You just snapped it.
yeah, I got
Yeah.
it. I got it. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need the repetition of learning, so I seemed really smart.
Yeah.
Now, I guess that's up for judgment. I don't know, is someone with a photographic memory really smart or they just have a photo like, I don't know. So, I could do that, and I was in advanced classes in elementary school, and then I got to high school, and I was an award-winning athlete, but this whole performative way of living in order to earn approval or acceptance and be worthy, um, was extremely difficult to keep up with. So
Right.
my anxiety was building because I needed to maintain what I did last time, right?
Yeah.
So I was living actually in a fear of failure
Right.
that fed a wild perfectionist energy, the perfectionist way of thinking that also led me to, taking diet pills by the time I was 12. I'd ride my bike to the mall and use my babysitting money, but and use diet pills and because I also could avoid criticism if I was thin enough, if
Been
I
enough.
was
Right.
pleasing in the container at which I occupied.
Yeah.
So, there was just a lot of hot messness going on in
Yeah.
there. And so much of it because I didn't know who I was, I knew who I needed to be for
Mhm.
other people
Yeah.
feel safe, secure, and good about themselves. I did not know who I was or
Yeah.
how I needed to be. Now, also, what my parents did not know, which is I know all of this now, is I had ADHD. I have ADHD.
Yeah.
So it's why I was also so obsessive about my sports. Sports was the one place that I could feel good in my body because I
Mhm.
had completely dissociated from my body.
Yeah.
And I, as Glennon Doyle says, I voted it off the island because it was not supporting me
Yeah.
through puberty and the gaining weight and it was not working. So I was really disconnected from myself. But when I was in sports, in athletics, I was the only place I could connect to my body and I felt really good in my body. Um,
Mhm.
and even that stopped working for me, like I said, in puberty as I was gaining weight, and then my muscle mass ratio was changing, and so everything, the wheels just kind of fell off because now I was in advanced classes in high school, and I couldn't just regurgitate, which is actually how our learning institutions are set up. Is it is rote learning, which is just
Exactly.
put it in,
Or-
put it in, put it in, put it in,
Yes.
so that you can spit it out, spit it out, spit it out.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
so
Yeah.
so I couldn't do that anymore because in higher grades, and I was also put in advanced classes, I was required to wait for it, actually apply the knowledge.
Terrible. Wow.
No, I did not know how to apply the knowledge. And so the entire persona that I had built that
Mhm.
felt safe, it was like my castle.
Yeah.
Um, the person that I liked because I received approval
Mhm.
for being that person, I couldn't be that person anymore. The
Yeah.
wheels were falling off.
Yeah.
And anything that anybody does for at least 10 years, you'd like to think you're pretty good at,
Yeah.
we begin to identify with. And so
Yeah.
I completely identified with that person. And then all of a sudden I didn't know how to be her. I didn't know how to do the work. And I didn't my mental health was going downhill so fast. I stopped showing up to sports, which seems questionable, but not a single person asked me why. I just stopped showing up to practices. I stopped showing up. I just did what depression and anxiety I isolated.
Put it in, yeah. And
Because
I
yeah, go
gotta
ahead.
pause you for just a minute because I want everyone to notice that the story you're telling here, Aly. We could take the details are going to be really different, but you're essentially telling story of I don't know what the percentage would be 70, 80, 90% of most teens today.
Right.
And again, we could take out sports and put in academics, or we could take out, eating disorder and put in, video gaming addictions, or we could swap a lot of different stuff in and out. But the fundamental idea of I was a I was a hot mess and did not know what to do and was having a really hard time is such a common story. So I love where you're going with this. So anyway, I just wanted to point out like,
Mhm.
wow, this is an amazing story you're telling, but this is the story of teens today.
Today.
It is. It
It's
is
incredible.
because
Yeah,
school is a performative environment.
exactly.
You are pleasing, safe, and even receive perhaps compliments so long as you're in the upper you're like 70% and up. You
Right.
can disappear and and be like I'm sorry, I've lost the word for it. You can kind of like disappear off the radar
Yeah.
if you're in that 70% ish range, so you're
Yeah.
safe. The point is, do you hear what I'm saying? You're safe.
Safe. Yeah.
The minute you fall below a particular mark, perhaps in a class or overall in school, so it might be 60%, might be 65. For me, it was, well, I was failing classes. Like, I don't think I showed up to a single Monday in grade 11. I just skipped them all. That was my way, which is what teenagers do,
Yeah.
is avoid,
Oh.
because I had no emotional coping skills.
Hmm.
Because again, my parents were raised the way that every other parent was raised in the generation. Emotions are messy. They were taught, thanks to Dr. John B. Watson in 1920, whose work continued until 1960. And even though it was disproven, is wildly pervasive in our education system and in parenting
Yeah.
today,
Okay.
taught us that emotions are dangerous and the only way to change or connect with your teenager is to pay attention to, coerce, and change their behavior.
Yeah.
You do not pay attention to emotions. And so my parents were raised that way. So, of course, they were raising me that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so their way of attempting to change me, or this is what we're going to talk about, is how to motivate me. How do I motivate my teen?
Yep.
Was stiffer punishments, consequences, criticism, coercion, shaming, guilt, which is the irony. The irony is that when you're doing that, you are actually only eliciting emotion as
Yep.
through pain points and fear as an attempt to change behavior. You're not connecting with the emotions. You're trying to leverage the emotions,
Yeah.
which is a big difference. So my parents did a lot of that, and so that was why I isolated and avoided, which is what
Yeah.
many teenagers do. And their parents are saying, "But I'm just trying to motivate them. Like, why? What is it going to take to make them care? And what is it?" Well, it's not that, because they are so afraid, and they're so afraid and alone
Hmm.
and isolated.
Hmm.
And not a single teacher said to me, I was the student class president, I was the the leader of everything. And I just stopped showing up. Went from straight A's to F's. I actually just found my transcript the other day. I was cleaning some things out, and nobody, not one teacher, said, "Are you okay?" Like, and not, "What's wrong with you? What's happening for you?
Yeah.
What is it like to be you
Right.
right now?"
Yeah.
Right.
Not a sports coach, not a teacher. Nobody said anything.
Wow.
Mhm.
And so it was further isolating. And then this is where it becomes kind of tricky, like for parents with an intellectual brain that is formed, again, being raised often in a performative environment. Why didn't you just go ask for help? How
Right.
that?
It can't be that hard. Yeah.
The teacher's
Right.
right there. Go see, take your leg, go ask for help. Okay. So the problem with that is in performative environments, asking for help makes you the stupid kid. It
Yeah.
makes you the broken one. Now, I was already living with such massive fear of failure and perfectionism
Yeah.
to be smart enough, lovable, thin enough, important, all the things. I was the student who helped other
All the
students.
students. Yeah.
Do you think? And that's who I identified as for, I don't know, 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That now I was gonna go be or knew how to be the student who now was struggling and needed to ask for help. No, our
Okay.
psyche
Yeah.
doesn't make that leap
Mhm.
without 2 things. First of all, exquisite support at an emotional level that feels safe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
number 2, the key coping skill as studied by Dr. C.R. Snyder and also reaffirmed by many others, but Dr. Brené Brown as well, that the distinction between hopefulness, which by the way, hope is not a feeling, hope is a way of behaving,
Yeah.
is a way of thinking. Hopefulness and hopelessness,
Mhm.
right? The defining factor is one thing. It is that when I struggle or for whatever reason don't perform or get the result that I was looking for, people who are hopeful have significantly higher levels of resilience and confidence such that they do not attach that external result or performance factor to their worth or value or character.
Mhm.
So they continue to try and show up and ask for help when they need it. People who are teenagers, so many, a whole generation of teenagers who are feeling hopeless and then behave, because remember, hope is a way of behaving, who are behaving in a way that is hopeless is because they have and continue to, in our performative environment, internalize struggle, internalize the lack of results as a hot against their worth or value as a human being. And therefore, they stop trying and stop showing up and isolate and withdraw out of fear because what do you really think when I already believed that my value was so little such that I actually attempted to end my life,
Mhm.
that I was going to risk trying anything when I had one straw left of hope? Was I going to risk breaking that straw by trying? Because my belief system said, but if I try and I don't succeed, then I am a failure, which is all a shame story, by the way. I couldn't risk my one straw
Of
and one
course.
straw left.
Yeah.
And so it becomes the thing of why are teens isolating and they're just not trying and they're laying in their rooms and they're on their phones and video games or eating disorders or whatever. It's because they are being we have all been fooled into this whole performative environment, along with behavioralism, which is a way of treating people, which is focused purely on behavior rather than the emotions that drive the behavior. They're laying in their beds, they're isolating in their rooms, they're smoking marijuana, they're turning to nicotine and vaping and all these things because they are hopeless. They are believing that they are not allowed to struggle. And when they struggle, they are a failure. They are less than. They aren't lovable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really
So
good point.
it's a great point. It's a horrible downward spiral that
It is.
youth are in today. You know, and that and perpetuated from all these different generations and stuff. So I'm making some notes and I've got a couple of follow-up questions, but um, I think this is probably a good segue because I sense you're gonna share with us some insights on how you got out. I mean, the wheels fell off the wagon, it skidded out of control somewhere, and you don't look like you're off the wagon. I mean, you look like you got the wheels on now.
You figured it out.
You're
Do it.
So there's a good
But
story
you're
here,
amazing now.
and I think we can get into that if we go to really the core question that we wanted to ask you is if there was one principle that you could identify that would help to resolve or help get through this and create happier families and happier teens, happier parents, what's that key principle look like and what would it be? And maybe we can run down that road and see if we can get some resolution because it's a hot mess right now.
It is a hot mess. So I think the only way for me to answer that is codependency,
Mm,
because codependency is the one of the outcomes of this performative based environment and then behavioralism of parenting. So one of the definitions of codependency is I'm not okay if you're not okay.
right.
Okay, so let's kind of take that statement and break it down a little bit. So if my teenager is struggling, my entire obsession is to fix them,
Yeah.
because if they're not okay, the way our past generations have been set up, the thinking is that I'm not a good parent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Now, also because of these the way this has all been set up, parenting is not only an Olympic sport, but parent shaming is also an Olympic sport. Parenting has been conflated with morality.
Hmm.
So if I am not a good parent, which I'm obviously not if my teenager is struggling,
Clearly, yeah.
my identity as a parent is now under question.
Right.
That is not true. I'm not saying that is true. I'm
Oh,
saying
you're saying that's the belief level. That's the belief structure that's existing
yeah,
in society.
this is how codependency
Hmm.
is, that the way you be, act, show up, perform is reflecting my value.
Yes. Yep.
That is codependency.
Yeah.
Whereas, so I think this I'm not okay if you're not okay is the whole thing, is that feelings were never meant to be fixed. Feelings were intended to be felt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But because we don't know that, we were never taught that. In fact, what we were taught was codependency. I'm betting most people listening to this were taught, had these things said to them. Oh, if you do that, your mother is going to be so angry. Don't you do that, your dad is going to just. Do you see how my behavior as a child, as a very young child with an undeveloped brain, I learned my behavior dictated their feelings. So therefore, I was responsible for how they felt.
Yep.
Mhm.
You're
So
going to
now
embarrass the family if you do that. You know what? I can't believe
you're going to get in so much trouble, and
so much. Yeah.
because my mother or father are not responsible for their behavior or emotions. Apparently, as a 5 or 4-year-old, I am.
Yeah.
And so now, as a parent, and this is again, there's no shade against other
No,
generations. We're unlearning scientific evidence that this is really toxic and perpetuates mental health issues. Is that in fact your teenagers' choices, their how they feel, that has nothing to do with who you are as a magnificent, courageous, caring parent here right now listening to this.
yeah.
Love it.
They are who they are as an autonomous human. You are who you are as an autonomous human. And if you were never told that you could lay on the couch all day and eat bonbons and drink your frozen whatever or your cuppa, you have so much inherent value and you did nothing.
Yeah.
You're you are super. You're amazing. Your child may struggle, and I'm not saying you don't care about whether they're struggling. Of course, I'm sure it breaks your heart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm saying it doesn't change who you are as an incredibly valuable human, and it doesn't change who they are as an incredibly valuable human. It
Yeah.
means that they're struggling. That's all it means. They
Oh,
don't
man.
have to be
Yep.
fixed. So So that's one part of this codependency is I'm not okay if you're not okay. Is that parents are running around as the cleanup crew, like,
Mm.
oh no, okay, oh don't feel bad, okay, oh you feel bad, okay, well we'll make sure you get that. No, because they can't be unhappy or sad because what we've been raised as half humans, we've been raised as happy, shiny, sparkly people who are all good. Everyone's good, right? We're good, right?
We're good.
Take the blue pill till you're good, right?
Yeah.
And what we know is that in fact there is 87 different emotions and feelings, and they are all part and necessary for the whole human experience. And that also, I'm going to go back to the hopelessness and hopefulness, hopelessness.
Yeah.
Do you know how you get from one to the other?
I was gonna ask you
Yeah.
that to dig into that for us. So go.
Struggle,
Struggle. Yeah.
pain, frustration,
Um,
failure, devastation, melancholy. All of the non-happy, shiny, sparkly feelings are how you get normalizing them as part of learning and a rich part of the human experience, even when they suck and you feel gross and I can't go through any more Kleenex. My nose, I'm like, because I've cried my eyes out all night. Great. I'll sit with you. I have no interest in fixing you because you're human. That is what is proven as to how you build resiliency and confidence to go from hopelessness to hopefulness. And we don't internalize that those half of the human experience is a derogatory cut against our value or potential for success.
mhm.
So that's one part I think of the codependency that comes in, and then um, it's
And
the
sorry, before you go on, I just want to clarify there. So essentially, what you're saying is, we've got this codependency system set up, and as part of that, we are isolating our children or trying to isolate our children from the struggle. But
yeah,
it's the struggle, the acceptable, non-judgmental, hey, go ahead and struggle. It's okay. We love you. We're going to sit with you. That's actually what brings the hope. And
yeah,
that hope is what brings the resilience and the strength. So
yeah,
it's an amazing scenario there where we're not, it's like we're trying to love them so much.
yeah.
And I think that there's part of it, it's like to validate our own value, we're really trying to love ourselves too. And dang it, if just Bobby could just be a great teenager, I could be a great parent, we could all love ourselves. So let's fix this.
Right,
That's the
because
problem.
I'm always trying to fix you because I need so we're parenting from fear.
Yeah.
So we're parenting from fear of the messed up equation of parenting being morality. And if
Yeah.
my child is successful, I'm therefore a good parent. If my
Yeah.
child struggles, I'm therefore a bad parent.
That's right. Yep.
That whole messed up
Yeah.
thing.
Crazy.
So we parent from fear, and there's two outcomes that come from that. Is one is fear of losing control, okay,
Yeah.
which is authoritarian parenting, which is very much parenting of the day.
Mhm.
So I need greater control. So
Mhm.
I will use greater punishments and leverage pain and fear to get my child to change. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Push up.
which is how many of us were raised.
Eating.
And then there's parenting from fear, which leads to the dichotomy of that, which is permissive parenting.
Yeah.
And now I'm more afraid of conflict because so I'm either insecure in myself because of codependency, and so I
Yeah.
need to control my child and have power over them, or I'm insecure about my worth and myself, and so I'm afraid of conflict, so I don't address anything, and I want them to be my friend, and so there's no guidance or effective healthy boundaries or structure, and so that leads to many of the same outcomes.
Yeah. So I saw this so clear. I mean, my parents divorced when I was 9. They got remarried and then they divorced again when I was 11. But the point is that my dad, who I'm great friends with now, and my mother's passed away, which was a great relationship. But my dad was very, very, very authoritarian, right? And especially with the older children. And it
Yes.
was interesting to watch my sister, who was the second child, raise her children in the pendulum swung, right? It was like dad
Mm.
was authoritative, and she was, today we would definitely say that she was
Permissive.
physically abused, and really, really hammered on when she was young. And
Right.
so, raising her children, like
Free
total,
for all.
essentially total anarchy, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm not criticizing or blaming her, but it was just like, I'm not going to do to them what was done to me. So, whoop,
Yes.
hands off, baby.
Right. And
Yeah.
that is exactly the point.
Yeah.
Is because there is no training for this.
Yeah.
If you said, I hate chocolate, I don't like chocolate anymore, what's the first flavor that comes to mind?
Chocolate.
And the opposite being vanilla.
Vanilla.
Exactly.
Because our brains are wired such that if we say, I'm going to do different, I'm definitely doing different, I'm not doing that, our brains hear opposite.
Opposite.
Because we have no frame of reference for a middle ground, because we're not taught this, because
Right.
this still isn't pervasive enough. And so our brains don't just do different. We think different. Let's go to a little bit less, but a middle ground. Well, that's what our intellectual brains, that's what I thought I was going to do. Thank you, Mary Poppins. But actually, what I did was some of the complete opposite, because I had no frame of reference
No reference.
either. So I
Yeah.
went from authoritarian shame, criticism, all the way over to just I'll love you for anything. But then I still had these weird patterns that kept showing up over here on authoritarian. And I'm like, around.
Where is
Well,
it?
bad news. It's an unmarked exit.
Yeah.
That's right.
It is an unmarked exit, the gravel road next to the blue spruce with the fence post that's broken. And so it still is unfortunately a road less traveled, not because again anyone watching isn't smart or intelligent or doesn't care enough or isn't loving enough. It's because we're not being taught enough. And
Yeah.
the older generations, the older ways of thinking and being are still pervasive enough. We believe that that is either normal or we're running away from them to create different, but what we're doing is opposite,
Yeah.
not middle ground.
Yeah. I
Well,
love
I love what you said about the struggle. And it's going through the struggle that's going to get them to become more resilient. One
Yep.
thing we like to talk about is God. He is more concerned about our growth than our comfort, right? And he is
The time.
he's the ultimate parent, that we can look at, and it's like he's not just going to give us everything that we ask for. Just constantly just give us everything we pray for, everything right immediately. Here you go, here you go. He's not a great vending machine in heaven, right?
And he's also not whacking us every single time we make any kind of mistake.
Yeah. He allows us to grow through the
Oh,
struggle.
wouldn't that would be terrible. God's like, you made a mistake. Boom. Okay.
Well, but okay, but to be fair, there are many parents who I work with who have Christian faith and operate still very much from the Old Testament,
Fair enough.
which
Yeah.
to your point is very
Shows up.
consequential. It's more transactional.
Yeah.
You did this, I'll do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did this, I'll do this.
Yeah.
You go big, I'll go higher. Like
Yeah.
and so um I think there's a whole other half of the book called the New Testament. And the New Testament is where like we need to anchor in that, like as you said, like God is the epitome of unconditional love. Does he say it's okay? No.
No.
Is he going to love me in my most broken times where I feel there's no answer, like he did for me? And the reason I am still here and my attempt to say that's enough didn't work
Yeah. Yeah.
because I was loved in all of my brokenness by at
Mhm.
least one person.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
great. Thank you for sharing that.
And you were given space to make those mistakes
Mm-hmm.
and the loving support, like you said, just like we don't make that transition from hopeless to hopeful.
Yeah.
I think the words you used were incredible or insatiate support. You used some big word there that was awesome. It's like we need like this massive amount of support and
Yeah. Exquisite support.
exquisite. That's the word you used. Thank you.
Exquisite meaning you are walking into someone's sacred space
Yeah.
when you are walking into their emotional storm.
Hmm.
So try going in there as a cleanup crew or like with all of your like top cleaning claws and your, best vacuum and all the mops and the paint and the ladders. No, 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 put them away.
Yeah.
You are walking into someone's sacred space, and what they need more than anything is you to simply be with them,
Mhm.
to see them, to validate that their humanity is never at question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I think that that is, in my times of crisis and struggle, that is, I felt that per- perfectly from two different beings in this universe. One is God, second is Margie. And I really mean that. Margie's the ideal candidate for this. She's incredible at it. But it's so important, because hey, I have my own great emotional storms, and we watched our children go through those emotional storms, and it is sacred ground. You're absolutely right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
where do we go? Where is that exit? Where is the gravel road next to the blue sign?
Yeah.
What are some things, that specific things that we can help, our community with, in terms of finding at least the entrance so they can start traveling down that road?
Right, right. So the first thing I want to say is, again, if you're listening to this and you're still listening to this far, you're probably different curious.
Yeah.
To use woke language, you're probably different curious.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
great. So yay, different is a great place to start. Great place to start. Um, I I'm really cautious with my words. I think in the internet land, there's like there's all this things you can find out about, like, don't do this. You're a bad parent if you shouldn't do this. That's the authoritarian parent side,
Yeah.
and then there's this permissive side that um has less structure and is more about being your teenager's friend and not necessarily providing some of the emotional guidance and support that they're looking for. And then there's sort of the I think the new word, which is gentle parenting. And I'm going to be really clear right now. I am not a gentle parent, and nor do I call it gentle parenting. And again, I'm only saying this from the perspective of, because this information is not widely, it's not pervasive enough yet.
Yeah.
When my brain, which is only here, I'm focused on different, so I know I'm moving away from authoritarian, and I don't want permissive because that's apparently also really bad, and I don't want to be judged and shamed. Gentle is 2 steps away.
Mm.
So that's not helpful because I
Yeah.
don't know what that means. So what I call my platform, what I anchor in, and what I believe I did and have had feedback from and done a whole YouTube video on what my kids actually thought about this whole parenting thing. Um, with me, I say it's respectful parenting.
Hmm.
There you
Now,
go.
there's a reason I think that helps us find this unmarked road of middle ground is respectful parenting, because it brings into play everything we've discussed until now.
Okay.
I need to respect myself
Mhm.
enough to know that I am an autonomous, valuable, magnificent human being because I'm here and my worth is not tied up in my child. Okay. I need to redefine respect because in authoritarian parenting, we were taught respect equals compliance,
Yes. Right.
immediate obedience and compliance. And that is respect. Well, unfortunately, our parents were sold down the river on that, not their fault. And then so far, so were we. And
Yeah.
so that's not respect. So, in order to do respectful parenting, I need to first figure out what is respect, which is a deep admiration for someone else's emotions, values, and stance.
Mhm.
Okay. That
Yes.
doesn't sound like compliance or obedience. Okay. So, in order to instill a deep respect, I need to have one for myself.
Yep.
I need to figure out how to have a deep respect for my teenager while still walking this tightrope of respecting myself. Because the minute I give it up, I'm permissive parenting or I'm trying to control. And so that's why I think if we put a signpost on that dirt road, on that hard to find exit, and we say respectful parenting, I think it is a better marker than gentle parenting, which is 2 steps off of permissive. Only, I'm not saying, okay, I should be really cautious. I know a lot of incredible people who stand on the platform of gentle parenting, and they're amazing and backed in science. Gentle parenting is not 2 steps from permissive, but unless you have a felt experience of it, it sounds too much the same.
Yeah.
That's all I am saying. That
Okay.
is
Oh,
what I'm saying. Okay,
Right.
which is So what I call respectful parenting is very aligned with the current gentle parenting, but I believe calling it respectful parenting is a little easier to identify with instead of doing this different opposite thing.
Right,
Like
right.
you just blew right by the exit and you just missed it. No. And so I think if we can have a look at what is respect, are you willing to understand that what you were taught and what your loving, amazing, incredible parents were taught was respect is actually not respect?
Yeah.
That came from behavioralism. Thank
Mhm.
you, Dr. Watson, for that. Which we've now disproven actually is not only unethical, it is emotionally traumatizing, and not does not match the science of how our brains were created, like to work.
Yeah.
So we need to redefine respect. We need to redefine what self-respect looks like, because if I don't know that, how am I actually modeling it?
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
that's defining respect for myself, defining what is respecting this human being that I'm raising in a way where I say, hang on now, nope, speaking with me like that is not okay.
Yeah.
Without going to, oh, we're going to shut that down right now because I am deeming their raw, wild, emotional, hot mess, which is normal for the teen brain, as disrespect. Because anything, remember, we were children who were only spoken when we're spoken to. We needed to be compliant. We need to be appropriate. That's not actually normal. That's not an autonomous human. That's a robot. We're not raising robots. We're raising whole humans. Remember, with the whole 87 emotions, not just the shiny, sparkly one. So our teenagers are going to come at us with these emotional blow ups, and everything's our fault, and they're like using all these five chili spice language enough to melt your eyebrows off and be like, okay, I love you, I don't love your language.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say. I love you and your feelings matter to me. I'm going to take a 5-minute break because remember, I'm in respectful parent. I'm modeling respect.
Yeah.
I respect you enough to hear what you have to say, and I respect me enough to say those specific words and phrases, and you must be specific.
Yeah.
Words and phrases have crossed my line of respect because I've done the work to redefine it, by the way.
Mhm.
So I'm allowing you to have anger. I'm allowing you to have disappointment and frustration and all arrogance and all the normal feelings. And I'm not saying that's disrespectful. I'm saying these specific words and phrases are disrespectful.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to take a 5-minute break and I'm going to come back because I do love you. Now your teenager's going to feel abandoned and shut down and they're going to be angry. And then you keep your word in at 4 minutes and 59 seconds. You walk exactly back because you remember that's respect.
Yeah.
Punctual, reliable, that's respect. You come back and you say, I love you. I want to hear what you have to say. Can we try that again? And they might still have been yelling. They're like, you don't care about me. You don't. And it's okay for them to feel that way. But when you return, because you're respectful, so you kept your word and you returned and you said, try that again. It's just these certain words and phrases just felt over my line. Can you say that a different way?
Yeah.
And they might say, no, I don't, you don't love me. They might say, no, I don't know, because they just, yes, went from 16 basic emotions to 87. So, just 4.5 times. And they
Right.
aren't like a phone that you plug in and gets a software update overnight. No, no, it didn't happen. Funny little joke. Self advocacy and them learning language for that new massive 4.5 time growth in emotions, that's on you. I know, nobody ever told you, but it is. So this is how this is going to happen, and it's going to go down by you continuing to allow them to refine their message, not suppress the message. I
Mm.
don't know if you've tried holding a lid on a boiling pot before, but somebody's going to get burned.
Yeah.
Yep.
What we're trying to do is turn down the burner. That's the source of the boil,
Mhm.
not hold the lid on, right?
Yeah.
And that's the difference between behavioralism is I only pay attention to the behavior and the outcome and what I'm seeing, as
Yeah.
opposed to what is the source, which psychology we can prove is 100. It's emotions. Emotions are 100% the source of all behavior.
Yep.
So if I want my child to be raised as a whole human, then we're going to give them the whole experience, and I'm going to keep coming back. And then they get spicy again, and I say, "Well, okay, I love you. Your feelings matter to me. I'm going to come back in 5 minutes. Let's try this again." And when you are respectful, which means you keep your word, you are reliable, and you come back on time, and you keep your promise of I will listen to you, not fix you, because you don't need fixing. What you're trying to do is feel. I want you to feel.
Yeah.
I'm helping you refine the expression of that so that it is empowering and you feel heard. And, that these are one of the ways we go to respectful. And so that's kind of the example I use for like the whole big picture of respectful parenting,
Yes.
where there is 100% room for emotions,
Yep.
and we are 100% paying attention to the refinement of the expression of their humanity. So that's
Yeah.
behavior and emotions, and not making it pleasing for me,
Mm-hmm.
because that's disrespectful to them.
To
But
them, right.
making it
Making-
pleasing, yeah, we're helping them to refine it so that it, number one, feels authentic to them. I'm real clear about that, authentic to them. And that given your experience as an adult who has a formed brain, you are doing your best to help in that refinement based on everything you know, to help them self-advocate in a way that is going to land with the person they're speaking with, that is going to have them feel empowered and heard and have effective words and language. Because we can also prove in science that when we have language to express our words, our feelings, our human experience, mental health instantly improves.
Mm. That's so great. And I'm sure all of us, everyone listening to this, watching this, is imagining these situations in their home with their teenagers right now, and how just that one tool that you've explained can help us so much.
So much.
Right.
And you know what I love is that we talked about this. Well, I know that when you don't feel valued, you talked about that one last straw, and it's like, man, that's the last straw of any scrap of self value that I feel. Am I going to really risk that? And the answer is no. And those that do, of course, they end their life, and that's the ultimate expression of the straw is gone, right? And sadly, we see that. I mean, suicide rates are just way, way unacceptably high for our
Unacceptably
teens,
high.
you know? So what I love about your approach here is that even in the midst of the authoritative and the performance-based parenting would say is out of bounds, uncontrolled language, like totally disrespectful, all the negative things we were on assigned to that, even in the midst of all that, it's like, I respect you, you have value, and I'm going to treat you like you have value. And it's okay for you to it's okay that the pot's boiling over. Like, you don't get it. Let's just figure out how to turn the heat down. This is easy. And, and, the approach of giving that love and giving that value in the midst of the storm is unbelievably powerful and respectful. And I think that it shows a level of maturity and understanding that most parents don't use because they don't know. Right. Well, if you're listening to this right now, you know now.
Now you know.
Right? You know now. Like Aly's like, here's the exit, people. Here's the first step to the exit. I love it.
So great.
Yeah, I'm like the crazy person at the exit with like the fluorescent badge, and I've got like all neon, and I've got my waving sign.
And you have your waving sign out.
And unfortunately, I keep seeing cars going whizzing past. I'm like, oh, missed that one. Okay, well, I'm gonna keep trying. I'm gonna keep trying.
Okay.
Keep doing it. Keep it up.
You might already be going down here, but one of the most interesting things about what you said is this, where you said, I've taken time to define those boundaries and what respect is for me.
Right.
And the second thing that I find incredibly fascinating is this, like, okay, we as parents, we definitely have roles. I mean, I think that God clearly set up this system of, oh, you get this baby who's totally helpless, and guess what? You get to be the caregiver, right? You get to be the guide, the mentor, the loving, the role model, right? And so we do have this incredible responsibility, this divine opportunity to bless these children's lives and setting up our own boundaries. And also, you talked about giving them a language set so they can better understand, like, what in the world is going on. I think you said this 19 emotions to the 87. If I got those, it's like, like my
What's
world just
happening to me?
exploded and I don't know what's going on, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So I would love to hear, and I'm keeping a little bit of eye on our time. I don't want to chew too much of your time, but I would love for just a few minutes to help better understand your process of setting. You don't have to tell me all the exact boundaries, but your process of creating those boundaries,
Mm,
and some of your insights on giving them that language set and helping them understand these emotions without them feeling diminished or less valuable, right? Like,
right,
"You're
right.
feeling this, like, what's wrong with you?" I mean, I've heard that from parents so many times, like, "Why would you think that? What's wrong with you?" Like, "Okay,
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
wrong." They just don't understand. So
right.
those 2 things are things that are really interesting to me is that the boundaries
Right.
and the language set. And if you feel like there's something even better we should talk about, go for it, but
Yes.
that really fascinates me.
Well, yeah, so the biggest thing is, um, being open-minded enough to understand that what you learned was respect is not actually respect.
Yes. Yeah.
Because so many people who come into my programs, the first thing I do is I tell them the definition of what is respect, and they usually are typing in the comments in some of my live, programs is like, "Mind blown." Because this is so diametrically opposed to how we've been raised, and so, of course, we're doing what we learned, which is also habitually normal in our brains, and we can't figure out why it's not working. And so, um, redefine respect. Then I talk about what is a boundary and what a boundary is not. So a boundary is not manipulation or coercion. And just those might sound like big words. So coercion is leveraging fear or pain for the purpose of changing behavior. So that's the whole I'm taking your phone.
Yeah.
The phone has nothing to do, it's not correlated at all to the transgression, but because that seems to be the biggest pain point. So that's coercion. That's not a boundary.
Yeah.
Most of us learned that threats and ultimatums. If you don't do this, I'll. That's a threat.
Well,
If you
yeah.
don't do this, I'll do something. Those are manipulate. Those are not all boundaries. And most parents who come to my programs, bless all of them, were taught exactly what we were. That same. So we have to redefine respect. We got to redefine what a boundary actually is, and
Yep.
then I give them a worksheet in my program that helps them go back to this respectful parenting. Okay, what is important to you? What is important to you about, like, name the change you want? What's the change you want to see? What's important to you about it? What specifically feels respectful about that change? And that instant, what we're starting to peel back is, are you looking for obedience and compliance? Or is
Mm.
this actually a boundary?
Mhm.
Exactly. Love it.
Okay, because a lot of the things I want my kids to do. I mean, do I have an ego? Yes. Am I yes? Do I want my kids to just look at me and nod and do everything I say? Yes. Is that
Right.
realistic? No. Would that help them? No. And do I need more power? Probably not. So that's
Yeah.
not a good idea.
Yeah.
Um, so we have to define, is what you're even asking for a boundary?
Yeah.
Or is it an insecurity point where I feel like I'm losing control, which triggers all kinds of things in our brains?
Right.
Once we dial it down, we go through what they learned, what a boundary is, what a boundary isn't, what is the change you want, and is this actually a boundary, or is this something that you're just feeling really frustrated about, and we need to just work through that you're not getting compliance. Then I take them through the specific language on how to word a boundary,
Mm.
um, because boundaries come from ownership.
Yeah.
Mm.
Boundaries, okay, so this is another part that I talk about boundaries. We were often raised in expectations.
Mhm.
Now, expectations are behavioral, they are cultural norms, they're necessary in the world. Like, stop at a stop sign, don't run over pedestrians. Like, those are
Right.
pretty important expectations. They are behavioral, but they're also transactional. So if I run that stop sign, the consequence is I get a ticket.
Yeah.
If I hit a pedestrian, dear Lord, please no, there's probably going to be more significant injury and damage later down the road. So it's a transaction. You do this, I do this. You do this, I do this. That's the law.
Mhm.
Those don't work in relationships. Those are transactional. They are not relational. Remember, all behavior is driven by emotions. So we need to address the emotion to get the change. So a boundary comes from ownership. This is how I want to feel. This is what is okay and not okay for me. And I'm going to share with you what works for me. And then I'm going to be open to your input on what works for you, because a boundary is not a demand or command either.
Yeah.
This is where lots of parents say, oh, well, that's being permissive, because what now, my parents, like my child is like a collaborative parent. No, but they are a autonomous human.
They are a human. Exactly. Yeah.
A teenager. So I'm not asking you, boundaries have a bottom line. And I got to go in, as any good negotiator, I got to know my bottom line. What's my bottom line? But there's always a gray area. And so there is a bit of a negotiation. It doesn't mean you are giving up authority, which can feel very frightening.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm giving up control. Now
Yeah.
I'm permissive. No, it's you are allowing your teenager self-advocacy to begin to express their own wants, needs, and what is respectful to them.
Yeah.
Excuse me, to see if you can find a middle ground without ever crossing your bottom line. Because ultimately, you are the parent, and bottom lines are still bottom lines. And in a healthy hierarchy, which is important for psychological structure, there has to be a bottom line, a buck stops here.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
So what we're aiming for, as Prentice Hemphill says, this was in Dr. Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart, a boundary is the place at which I simultaneously love and respect you and me. Now, Mary Poppins, I thought I would be. I tell parents, it is never going to be that you're dancing on the head of a pin.
Right.
Like it just doesn't happen. Sometimes as close as you will get is different sides of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
So be it.
Yeah.
So long as you remain in respectful conversation about what is respectful for you and what feels respectful for them, and you are actually listening, not placating, you are listening to what feels respectful to them, you will be eventually close that gap. But relationships are not a easy button. They're not a send button. They are work. And so it takes effort and time to find that middle ground. Never in which are you giving up or negotiating your bottom line, because if you come from respect, you model respect. Now, we might at first, we might give up our bottom line because we're like, this feels weird. I'm off balance. And whoop, okay, great. Sure, that's fine. It's part of learning, right? Okay, so that's how we go through the boundary process. And then we lead to the other side of boundaries, which comes back from, but what if they don't do it? I get more parents where I haven't even finished saying the part that I just said. And they're like, what if they don't do it?
Put it on them. Authoritarian.
And that is authoritarian thinking that comes from the need for instant obedience and compliance. And that is not a relationship. That's a transaction.
Yeah.
It's not a relationship. And so I say, like, a boundary, if you're more worried about what if they don't do it, it's like you're running around, you're either playing like whack-a-mole, the video game where the mole pops up and you're trying to like constantly stop them from popping up, or you're like running around with a sledgehammer and putting holes in the walls everywhere. Like, hang on, we haven't even seen where the dents are. Whoa!
Right.
You don't go stamping consequences everywhere that you see them out of compliance or not being obedient. So then we look at, I have this whole my compassionate consequence formula, which is scientifically backed in psychology and behavior change for connection before correction. I don't take any credit for that. I believe that came from Dr. John Gottman. To connect before you correct, because we can prove that behavior changes at an emotional level. So if you don't connect with those emotions, what happens when we lean into coercion and taking the phone is we see temporary change, and it just keeps happening over and over and over. And it gets more and more frustrating because all your teenager's doing is losing respect for you.
Yep.
Because coercion is toxic. And they'll only change for whatever time is necessary to get back what it is that they lost. And then they're going to go back to being what they're being, because you're only ever looking at the surface, the outcome, the result, behavior. So the compassionate consequence is how it's how do you connect in the transgression to go back to that hopeful, hopeless, so they feel hopeful, Not because you're making the transgression okay. No, 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 never said that. I understand this feels scary, but so that you can find out why were they doing that? Or better
Yeah.
yet, because they don't always know, what was the emotional experience they were trying to create? What were they
Yes.
hoping would be the outcome? Because sometimes the outcome that happened, they actually had no control over. So you got to go back in the dominoes, like back 100 dominoes, to what were they thinking before? What were they trying to create? And then what choice did they make that may have led to said outcome?
Yeah.
But if you're only consequencing basing on the outcome, it's like trying to put a fire out by chasing the smoke.
Yeah. Exactly. You know,
You're
it's
not, yeah.
you can't get there. You know, it makes me think of a number of years ago, Marge and I were traveling. We're in an airport. And it was just the two of us. And we were at this restaurant in this airport, and right across from us was this family, two beautiful little girls, probably around 3 and 5 or 6, right? And both parents were sitting there on their phones, right? And these children sat, you know, respectfully. They had good behavior for about 2 minutes, and then they were all over the board, right?
Yeah.
And they were climbing on the table, and they were knocking stuff over, and they were interrupting the guests behind them, and and mom and dad. And so finally, the dad blows up, right?
Right.
And so and I've thought about this, and this is exactly what you're saying. So the problem was not what the child was doing. The emotion they were after was love and value from mom and dad. Like they wanted to be noticed, and that they wanted mom and dad to be aware of them, right? And mom and dad were
Yeah, or they might have wanted, I mean, my kids, oh my
whatever.
gosh, I used to take my kids grocery that I swear what my children saw was an obstacle course. I'm in the
Right,
store. What
right.
they saw is obstacle course.
First time, go, go, go. Yeah. Ah,
And so these kids might have been saying, like, notice me. Why are you on your phone? Because
yeah.
digital distraction is a big thing. I just want you to play with me. Or maybe, whoa, stuff to climb on. What
Kind
an
of like fun. I'm a
adventure.
child. Yeah.
Discover my body and how can I do this and whatever. But you're right. It wasn't that they were trying to piss anybody off.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And I think that the point here is that you going back to the dominoes and saying, okay, what emotion were they trying to create? And
Yeah.
teenagers are the same way. And we've seen this. And I've been on the other side of the Grand Canyon for my teenagers before, right?
Oh, me too.
And in reflection, looking back, like, oh, actually, this was an emotion that they were having or that they wanted to have, and they were doing this, but they had no idea how to create that. So ergo, they
Mhm.
were they were doing what they had saw on the internet or with other friends or with whatever it was, and like
Yeah.
they're just trying to piece it together to create that thing. Or our children gratefully have never gotten into any kind of drug use at all, but we see a lot of teens. It's like, I want motion here. Smoking pot might get me there, right?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
eating might get me there, or whatever it is. And so that realization that you're talking about, giving, understanding, taking back and saying, oh, it's an emotion that they're after. I think that is incredibly powerful, Allie. I'm having an epiphany here. It's beautiful. Wow.
Thank you.
So
Oh, that's so good. So good. Yeah.
so awesome. All right. So what I hear you saying again, I'm just a little cognitive at a time here, because we could go on for hours. This is incredible. But defining respect and understanding that that respect has a totally different definition. Understanding that at the root of that real definition of the respect, we can start to create actual boundaries where we respect each other.
Right.
And right, and there's that love there. All actions are driven by emotions. I mean,
Yes.
I know this from my persuasive copywriting and all my marketing. It's like, we do not sell on stats and data and facts and figures ever.
Right. No.
Like, it's all emotion driven. So
Yeah.
totally get that. And I love this about how boundaries equal ownership, and these expectations that we have, and what are the roots of those, and really reflecting. You didn't use the word, and maybe I, this authoritative background I come from, but this, it's like, okay, are we doing that out of selfish motives to self validate or to try to look good or whatever it is, or are we doing this because we respect us and we respect them, and we want them to be the best human beings, not more valuable, but the best versions of themselves, right? It's like,
Right.
it's like, okay, we're going to
Yes.
help understand how to do this. The other comment that I want to make real quick, and then I want to hear any kind of last words or insights from you, and then I want to talk a little bit more about your program because you've mentioned a few things about what you do with parents, and I just want to get some more clarity on that program a little bit. But um, I think that the other thing here is that when we as parents step back and have our own boundaries, what I'm understanding from you is that we become autonomous, right? Like we're no longer there's two things here that I think are fascinating. One is I really don't want maybe it's because I don't want to feel like a bad parent, but I don't want my children being in their, being married and having children and living in my basement or just living in the basement until they're 30 or 40 and not contributing to society or doing anything. Like, number one, because I don't think it'll be rewarding for them. Maybe that's judgmental, but I want them to go out and to become who God wants them to become and probably
Not live in your shadow.
not live in my shadow, right? I want them to be independent. And what you're talking about here is, oh, let me understand your emotions, and you're teaching them to take ownership of that and to have value regardless of what those are. I think it's just beautiful. And we get to be independent and autonomous as parents and to be valuable regardless of what choices our children make. It's an
Right,
incredible combination. I just want to make
right.
sure I'm following you and connecting the dots with what you're saying so far.
Yeah, it's all of those things, and I think that the marker that stops people at respectful parenting is that none of that means that you're giving up healthy authority.
Yeah, that's right.
It means redefining what authority means.
Yeah,
There must be a healthy hierarchy for the psychology of their brains to develop effectively.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, um, it's that authority does not mean power over or control.
yeah,
And it doesn't mean doing different such that we have none. It means that you are still the buck stops here person. You're still the bottom line person, but you're doing it via relationship,
yeah,
not command, control, sell, tell,
yeah.
obedience. So I'm not saying don't be the parent. I will never say again, I am not a gentle parent. I'm just not. My kids do never wonder where I stand,
Yeah.
ever. I will sit and listen to them and we will be in conversation and I will continue to find and refine that closest point we can meet.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I will not, this is not a free for all.
Right.
And you will do things that you don't enjoy,
Yeah.
not because it is for my pleasure or my gain, but because the world is not a candy store. It's not set up for your pleasure. It's set up for your growth, which is what you
Yeah.
said in the beginning.
Yep.
And that just as my children were shocked and disbelief to believe that I do not like grocery shopping, I do it because it is a function of me getting to have healthy food and feel good in my brain and body
Yes.
so that everyone has the experience they want when it's here.
Yeah.
So raking leaves may not be something you want to do, but it is not child labor. Woe is you. It is
Yeah.
that is part of the capacity and capability you have to contribute so that we all have the experience we want in this house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you go.
Love it.
That's so great.
Hey, Allie, I'm afraid we've got to wrap up, but holy smackles, man, this has been absolutely incredible.
We've learned so
I
much.
learned so much.
Yeah,
And
I'm
literally,
trying to go and implement some of these things and talk with our teenagers about these things.
clearly, it's just tip of the iceberg. So tell us a little bit, just briefly, tell us a little bit more about the program you've been
Programs,
alluding
yeah.
to, because I no doubt that Margie and I would love to dive into it, and also others in our community would love to dive into it. So tell us a little bit about that, and yeah, just give us
Yeah.
the ground on it.
Sure. So the program is the Empowered Parent Program,
Okay.
and it is 8 online modules
Uh-huh.
that were all put together again based on my experience as a teen, what I experienced, what I desperately wanted that my parents were never empowered with.
Yeah.
Everything I learned in a decade or so of therapy, recovering. I was also did a ton of personal development in communications, and then in my own coach training and certification, and raising 2 humans to young adulthood as well. So it's all of that
Yeah.
together, um, if heavily researched, because I truly believe everything I say has got to be founded
Yeah.
and backed in not only personal experience, but backed by science, and research based. But it's, as you and I are talking, it's not sciencey. It is backed by science, so that it's easy to understand, easy to unpack, step by step program. Everything from parenting and generational beliefs, boundaries and consequences, mental health and big emotions, the internet, teen dating, relationships, and sex. Which I talk about all of the things
Yeah.
in
Good.
8 modules that are online, and you get access to my private parenting community where I'm in there daily and I do live Q&As. So you're not just diving into something but you can't ask a question.
Right.
And you get lifetime access, so there's no like rushing through it. It's there for you, because a lot of times you might have one teen going through something, and then you hit the exhale for a year, and then lo and behold, you have another child who's doing it entirely differently, and
Totally. Oh,
so
Learn
yeah,
it
so
again.
so it's my signature program, and I've helped every parent that goes through it. It comes from different places, different struggles, and it is a 100% guaranteed no judgment space.
yeah.
No judgment. I
Yeah.
have no tolerance for it. So it's a
And
safe space.
testimonials from parents that have gone through the program, we took some time to review them, are awesome. They're amazing in the way that it's helped people. So, if you're listening to this right now, Margie and I want to wholeheartedly, like energetically, lovingly endorse Aly's program. Like literally, this is you've gotten a taste of it today, and you've seen some insights on what it can do. I think that Aly is obviously full. You, Aly, are obviously full of wisdom after wisdom after wisdom from the experience and the study and the research and the application that you've done. And so, 8 modules, a pack full of this would just be absolutely ideal for so many people in our community. So thank you very much. We will get specific links out to everybody, and we're going to share this with many people as we can, because we think that this is really, really helpful. Very, very helpful.
So thank you so much. Thank you
So one
so
last
much
thing,
for having
you're
me.
welcome. Anything that I should have asked you or could have asked you that you would like to share with us real quick in closing, or any last thoughts real quick?
No, I just want to say again that, for any parent, you're doing the best that you can. I
Yeah.
absolutely believe you're doing the best you can. And it is not your fault you have not been given this information.
Yeah.
It is an opportunity for you to get the information, because being a parent does not need to be this hard. You cannot fail at something you were never trained.
Yeah.
And your teenager isn't broken and you didn't break them. So let's go do this together.
Yeah.
It's messy, and I will walk with you every step of the way.
Love it. Love it.
So great.
Aly, thank you so much for your time. You've gone above and beyond and shared so many nuggets of wisdom with us. We really, really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.